Hi, my name is James Gratton. I'm a principal for Capgemini Financial Services and a CTO by trade. Today, I'm going to be taking you through the steps necessary to implement an integrated digital backbone in your organization. Today, there is a wide Chief Marketing Officer to Chief Information Officer divide. This divide fractures both business and digital agility. The emerging millennial generation, with $0.77 trillion of purchasing power, is changing the way we need to serve. Since 1955, only 14% of the original Fortune 500 companies now remain. It's a case of adapt or die in the marketplace. A responsive digital customer experience needs a new design and operating model. Future operating models will build outcomes from the technology center, thereby bringing the CIO and the CMO together in harmony. And through the 7 steps that I will describe over the coming slides, will digital success be achieved in your organization. The CIO knows that IT quick wins of today increase cost and reduce business agility tomorrow. On average, core information is duplicated at least 7 times across underlying systems. In addition, we have hundreds of said systems in a typical Tier 1 organization. Bolt-on digital, that's to say, digital veneers over this complexity, never improves corporate agility. The CIO cannot respond quickly enough today, and so the business steps in, propagating the problem, building solutions on a quick win, narrow focus. We duplicate and propagate complexity on the pretense of consumer responsiveness. That implies that most Tier 1 businesses are drowning in complex IT and operating models. The pace of market change is at an unprecedented rate. This is fragmenting the technology assets in our organizations. Moore's law is being pushed to the limit. Devices will outnumber people 4 to 1 within 6 years. The modern Tier 1 business has at least 7,000 interfaces today. Those interfaces on average cost £14,000 to build and £10,000 to maintain per annum. This equates to a brittled and fractured landscape. Increasing channel diversity, increasing modes of engagement, and the drive to omni-consistency is absolutely key. By 2017, 50% of our employees will use their own device. When it comes to consumers, the majority will be using multiple devices. Yet, this fragmentation comes in an era when digital personalization is king. The winners in the digital marketplace now understand it's human to human, not business to business or business to consumer. In amongst this diversity and this change, the CIO has 5 fundamental challenges which distract from the task at hand. These statistics are from the 2014 Capgemini Application Landscape Report. They show that the CIO is still inwardly focused and on a hopelessly long simplification journey. Despite this, our existing IT systems and assets are duplicated, with only 50% deemed as mission critical. What that says for the other 50% remains to be seen. And clearly having dubious value add, where we see up to 30% functionality overlap across applications. The CIO is faced with risk, quality, and governance overload, and this is trumping delivering business value. The more we add quick wins, the further we fragment and fracture this model. Conversely, and perversely, the Chief Marketing Officer knows that social is the new oil. 71% of consumers expect an online response in under 5 minutes, and nearly a third of them prefer contact via social media. The future is about being corporately sentimental, with the heart of tomorrow's boardroom needing to beat to the tweet of consumer intent. The emergence of social oil refineries that mine this influx of social data will take customer experience from crude to shrewd. The modern digital organization understands that social networks are not merely a venue for marketing. And yet the CIO understands that this challenge is more akin to fracking than deep sea oil drilling. A focus on immediacy of response can only be achieved through agility of approach. The average mobile consumer by 2017 will store personalized information in over 100 apps. Furthermore, there will be 50 billion interconnected smart devices by 2020. And that's not just computers. That includes home appliances, cameras, and just about any sensor you can imagine anywhere. We can now fit cameras and computers into a single cubic millimeter, which equates to about 30 for each character of text on this presentation. There will be hundreds of intelligent integrators in the home and billions in our future cities. Each of these integrators capable of providing an understanding of the world at hand. Yet, our big data capabilities are limited, and our devices and the networks and the internet overburdened and complex. This is no protection, however. What happens when we finally integrate this ecosystem? Will your organization be ready? The Chief Marketing Officer is the tactician for the now. They focus on narrow waves, leaving the Chief Information Officer to deal with siloed tsunamis. The CMO is traditionally a data separatist, not a corporate unionist. This tactician for the now approach limits future strategic opportunities for the organization. Despite this, the CMO operates at a pace of change that the consumer demands. Unfortunately, IT is unable to meet this demand. And next, we have the emergence of the millennial generation. This is the generation that expects immediacy and relevancy of response now, not tomorrow. A recent survey by Scratch, called the Millennial Disruption Index, interviewed over 10,000 millennials across 73 businesses in 15 industries over 3 years. The results of this analysis were astounding and have profound implications on future operating models for consumer businesses. By 2020, they estimated a 35% reduction from bricks to clicks across core channels. This physical channel reduction will be offset by a digital channel expansion. At the same time, as we go through this transition, there will be ultimately more devices than humans in this supply chain. Human-to-human personalization will be tantamount to success. Organizations that can mine over 100 apps of consumer context and engage across channels as needed consistently will win in the emerging demographic war for brand value. The CMO is therefore faced with a fundamental change to business model driven by the millennial consumer, a consumer demographic who will churn when not engaged with context. As I mentioned, physical channels will reduce and adapt into customer experience pods. These pods will be based on brand identity and consumer need and tailored accordingly. The technology consumer of tomorrow will expect high-value interactions at the click of a button or the touch of a phone screen. Over 2/3 of millennials will view and use money as a socially integrated, value-based and technology-powered transaction with your brand. Privacy issues will diminish. Millennials share information where they feel there's value. Finally, when we consider traditional brands, in this example, banks, against the expectations of the millennial generation, they expect tech companies to be the innovators going forward. In this case, a third polled do not think they will need a bank at all in the future. And nearly 3/4 would rather visit the dentist than visit a branch. When you couple this, that access to money in the minds of the typical millennial will be different in 5 years' time, and that Amazon, Google, Apple and PayPal are the brands with which they associate, the traditional businesses of today have a lot of change to go through. So, business models must adapt, or organizations will simply die. Since 1955, 429 of the original Fortune 500 companies have ceased to exist. That's an average of 7 a year. The top brands today are technology-centric in engagement. Each touchpoint across every channel must be customer-enhancing. Traditional companies who feel they can operate a digital veneer will be quickly exposed. Data and process agility, coupled with a startup culture in-house, will be critical to success. And yet, today's traditional business is a digital shantytown. The historical disconnect between IT and marketing means that any channel engagement or enhancement hits a wall of IT and process silos. The ultimate catch-22 is that in combating this challenge, this wall, the CMO bypasses corporate IT, delivering a unique solution for each campaign. This creates a shantytown of fractured assets of both data and process, with inappropriate plumbing, and leads to a poor customer experience. CMOs must always focus on campaigns and customer engagement, and indeed customer experience, but not at the expense of the IT foundation. IT employees, up to half of IT employees, simply do not get marketing, and this needs to change through increased collaboration in the future. Of course, the aspiration is to move from a digital shantytown to an integrated digital backbone. This needs to be clearly underpinned by the CIO, who has a traditional reputation for consolidating the IT landscape. Yet, customer experience requirements are institutionally fickle in nature. Indeed, many organizations are digitizing physical rather than truly embracing digital. A digital representation of an existing physical process does nothing to enhance customer experience. Digital means a transformed operating model, with the customer and their experience at the heart of all proceedings, with the internal processes and systems and the corresponding change to those processes and systems transparent to the outside world. What's more, we're trying to build this digital future on a linear expansion of data, which is increasingly unreliable. 2.5 exabytes created every day. Global data doubling every 1.2 years, and that with the emergence of the Internet of Things, only surely to increase and accelerate. The CIO continues to focus on inside-out structured activities, the CMO on outside-in unstructured sentiment activities. For true insight, both data perspectives need to be harnessed in unison. Traditional companies still have no single view of their customers or products and have a limited view of the ongoing relationships. To deliver context at each point of customer interaction, the CIO and CMO must collaborate with a strategy that focuses on the right data for the interaction at hand, rather than harnessing big data across the organization. The emergence of the Internet of Things is going to make this task harder, as this unstructured data deluge becomes potentially more valuable for customer experience, yet increasingly less accessible based on the processes and the data at hand. With CMO spend on IT set to exceed that of the CIO by 2017, according to Gartner, we need to move from the world of CMO bolt-on digital to an integrated world of a digital back strategy. Bolt-on digital simply does not work. To be successful, the back office and front office of every consumer-facing brand needs to transform its operations in parallel. A digital back strategy builds back from a customer outcome to ensure the corporate systems and processes evolve and simplify simultaneously. As the CIO simplifies the underlying legacy IT landscape, its agility increases. A data lake will shield this complexity in the short term and accelerate customer experience in the long term. As the Chief Marketing Officer ties consumer outcomes to IT bottlenecks, the funding and momentum this will cause will transform both the operating model and the customer experience. The brand will commit to store all interactions, and this will enable CIOs and CMOs to reduce application landscapes from hundreds to tens of applications, and truly to see eye to eye. And by this we mean to see insight to intelligence at every junction of progression forward. Digital organizations will now need to support 2 speeds of information dissemination. I call this the 2-speed information organization. This needs to support the different yet inextricably linked needs of both the CMO and the CIO in delivering the digital remit. The CIO is a train. They operate bottom up to ensure that corporate IT assets are consistent, cost-effective, and ultimately agile in nature. This requires, like a train network, tremendous foresight and planning. But when planned in advance, enables the infrastructure to be expanded on a controlled basis. The CIO just simply needs to be more flexible and agile going forward in their approach to this transformation. The CMO, conversely, is a scooter. They operate top-down and ensure that consumer experience is delivered at the pace that the consumer market dictates. Unfortunately, traditionally, this leaves a trail of devastation in terms of fragmented IT assets across the organization. Every new campaign delivers a new solution. And whilst that meets the need that's immediate, it destroys the digital operating model for the future. The key to digital success lies in focusing CIO agility efforts and aligning those to the CMO customer experience needs. on an incremental, value-driven basis. Customer experience improvements for tomorrow must not destroy the IT and data foundation of today. So I've mentioned the concept of the data lake. This operates on a store everything, access anything basis. And it will support, in parallel, the needs of the now for the CMO, as well as providing a vehicle for reducing complexity and data duplication in the future of the CIO. The data lake views a global view, which has traditionally been an obsession of CIOs, as simply yet another view, another local view, if you like. By viewing the global and local views with equal importance, this directly reduces the governance complexity and over a period of time increases the data and the context flexibility for the organization. CIOs can govern common information and treat global as simply local. CMOs can store everything and yet continue to encourage local and sometimes demographic-orientated data needs to be delivered quickly. The data lake is based on commodity hardware and software, but it also has different types of data storage, which operate at a lower TCO, but are based on data value. In-memory storage is more expensive. Key core information necessary for every key touch point with the customer. The summaries, indeed, may well find themselves in this storage. Longer mining activities or historical analysis of the customer, which is less frequent and less immediate in need, would be relegated to storage which is always available, but which takes longer to process. The world of the data lake seamlessly blends the inside-out structured data, the CIO obsession of yesterday, with the CMO unstructured outside-in data, the CMO focus of tomorrow, into one corporate information store, which can flex at pace without propagating and duplicating key corporate information assets. And so, it's clear that we need to enable the CMO and the CIO to work together more effectively. In the complex world of the future, the CIO will be focused on CMO outcomes, with future agility balanced carefully against immediate consumer need. The CMO will continue to focus on consumer need, but not at the expense of corporate technology assets. This collaboration ensures that we reduce customer experience friction through technology. It also ensures that the ideas and resulting actions are corporately compliant, yet digital in nature. Equally, the Chief Marketing Officer needs to measure up corporately. The CMO needs to be accountable and measurable for customer experience improvements, plus technology integration. Many CMOs are classed as Chief Experience Officers in the modern business. The consumer metrics by which performance is measured should be actionable, very much like Eric Ries's actionable metrics in the Lean Startup, for those of you that have read it. Actionable rather than vanity-based in nature. An actionable metric is something that is tied to the bottom line. An example of a vanity metric versus an actionable metric could be vanity being the number of website visits. This is good, but it doesn't directly impact the bottom line. An actionable metric would be commit to buy. This increased partner focus with the CIO will ensure over the future months that skill sets in marketing become more technology and IT aware, and this can only be a good thing. Chief Information Officer needs to speed up responsibly. The goal of governance and IT assurance, what I call the CINO, is still important because it ensures that the technology landscape is both governed and secure. However, modern digital CIOs need to temper this activity with a CIGO persona. The CIGO must be accountable and measurable for the evolving IT agility of the landscape, as well as responding at the pace of customer experience demand. All CIO outcomes should be both customer experience positive and bottom line focused. This new collaborative model between the CMO and the CIO must plan and execute a shared corporate outcome. Partnering for a specific outcome such as this requires cultural collaboration and a different modus operandi in terms of delivery going forward. The CIO inside-out structured perspective, which focuses on cost and reuse, must blend seamlessly with the CMO outside-in unstructured perspective, which focuses on consumer value and outcome. The future requirements and the underlying digital delivery model must ensure that transformation is performed front and back in parallel. Successful digital organizations will have a digital back strategy. As discussed, this takes a consumer outcome or need and re-engineers not only the customer experience veneer, but also moves down through the underlying processes and data and IT to integrate and consolidate a service. A digital back strategy requires the organization to continuously hit what is called the zero moment of truth with the consumer as the market changes. On the right-hand side, the CMO is focused on what the digital customer will do or will need next. And through a process of awareness and discovery, and with a value outcome focus in mind, will attempt to fight what is called consistency chaos. Consistency chaos is the propagation of entry points into the organization and an increase in their variety as well as volume. As channels become more complex and devices, applications, and data sources hit our organizations, the CMO is there to ensure this reflects positively on customer service. On the left-hand side, we have the world of the CIO. The CIO is focused on optimizing service to meet these outcomes, integrating and consolidating, and has a cost reuse focus. In direct contradiction to the CMO, the CIO is looking at reducing the number of entry points inside the organization. This is actually what we call agility chaos, or managing agility chaos. So when we look at the world of the CIO, the inside-out world with the shareholder in mind, against the outside-in world of the CMO, which has the consumer in mind, they meet head-on at what we call the Gartner nexus of forces. The CIO needs to become the conduit to each outcome by insulating the organization from the complexity of the underlying processes, data, and IT. The CMO must ensure that all requirements have both the digital customer at heart, yet pragmatic corporate realism in mind. Gartner's nexus of forces in the center looks at the unique combination of social, mobile, analytics, and cloud. And it looks at these from a context, access, behavior, and delivery perspective. The words of Donald Rumsfeld, in terms of known knowns and known unknowns, are very useful here as analogies. The world of access are the unknown knowns. Behaviours are the unknown unknowns. Delivery is the known knowns. And context are the known unknowns. Focusing on the appropriate blend of access, behaviour, delivery and context will ensure that the organisation gets digital right rather than digital fright. So integrated digital is the future business operating model. Imagine a world where the CMO can adapt the customer experience across channels on a try-before-you-buy basis with controlled risk. Imagine a world where the CIO can align corporate IT assets using an underlying sweeper approach after the CMO's startup value has been verified, ensuring that digital presence scales on demand. The business strategy, consumer market need, and operational focus are adaptive and incremental in nature. The CIO can gradually align IT assets, whereas the CMO can iterate rapidly before each digital rollout. To move forward on the digital agenda, the CIO and the CMO need to become digital mediators of trust. The CMO-CIO divide is a fundamental inhibitor for digital success. The current dichotomy of opinion between CIO and CMOs is damaging transformation focus and alignment from boardroom to shop floor. 45% of CIOs have said in a recent survey that marketing is a top priority. In the same survey, 64% of CMOs think that marketing is a bottom priority for the CIO. To break this hiatus, we need to demolish barriers between the marketing vision and technology reality, blending and adapting our organisation skill sets and roles, using digital mediation as the vehicle. Through increased collaboration and mediation, we need to start to focus on assuring renewable and reusable outcomes. Successful digital businesses must embrace process on the fly whilst thriving on data. Our processes must adapt in line with the market changes. Our data must enrich in line with the market changes. The CIO will implement and govern flexibility through an approach traditionally called loose coupling, whilst the CMO will live and breathe the Gartner Nexus of Forces world, that of social, mobile, analytics and cloud, to deliver the customer experience that is required. Any capabilities which hinder reusability and that are not renewable across current and future channels should be eradicated from the IT landscape. The CIO needs to integrate loosely to core systems, and the CMO will need to rapidly adapt to new social, mobile, analytics and cloud technology. Yet to achieve this digital transformation, this digital journey, organisations need to truly put data at the heart of each customer journey. The physical business of today manages performance like the aircraft cockpit of yesterday. The dials and instruments require frequent synchronization, rely on heavy manual intervention to provide appropriate context, and require substantial training to understand what we are seeing as the business evolves. Hence, we continue to fly blind whilst expending considerable amounts of effort on a perpetual calibration exercise. The digital business of tomorrow provides an integrated and adaptive view of our customers from cradle to grave, with context captured at every point of customer interaction. Fewer instruments are integrated and are self-evident, providing not only context, but future likely intent. This simplified cockpit now enables the business to focus on value-add activities which are assured and consumer-centric. This world will enable the CIO to focus on consistency and data governance, and the CMO to focus on value-add interactions with the consumer. The digital leaders of tomorrow will integrate what is called digital Darwinism. In the centre of this picture, we have something called the wheel of disruption, of which there are many variants. It is in effect a digital blueprint for effective use of social, mobile, analytics and cloud capabilities at key points of interaction, shown in blue, using underlying technology capabilities, shown in black. Adopting this model to drive digital transformation should reduce the fission of technology and process silos, more effectively harness relationships between products and customers, and ensure we live our customer journeys through the data as stories rather than through spreadsheets. The wheel of disruption shows the congregation of social, mobile, analytics and cloud at its centre, surrounded in black by a series of emerging technology capabilities, everything from big data to messaging to gamification, and then in blue, the touch points with your consumers and the vehicles for reaching out to those consumers. So areas such as payments, wearables, beacons, and the Internet of Things being classic examples. I've chosen 4 core brands to illustrate digital Darwinism, and I will be talking about each of these in the subsequent slides. The first example of digital innovation is that of Starbucks, and their approach is what I call front and back digital. Starbucks realised that social media is not about farming followers, but more about cultivating relationships. Consequently, it's now the #1 socially engaged brand. With over 54 million Facebook followers, 3.4 million Twitter followers, and over 1 million on Instagram. The My Starbucks Ideas site, which is a crowdsourcing mechanism for ideas and priorities, has over 500,000 subscribers. The approach at Starbucks was a joint effort between the Chief Information Officer, the Chief Technology Officer, and the CMO hybrid called the Chief Digital Officer. All their projects have a 50-50 split, with 50% of the transformation focus of the customer experience at the front end blended with 50% of the transformation and innovation at the back end. As a result of this collaboration, a relatively trivial change to the payment system driven by the CIO, although having bottom line impacts of 900,000 hours of line time, was coupled with additional engagement with the consumers at the point of sale. This mechanism enabled the baristas at Starbucks to spend 10% more time engaging the customers in the queue. So whilst the CIO savings and the 900,000 hours of line time reduced the operational costs, the increased engagement from this model means that now 30% of in-store transactions are now prepaid on loyalty cards. This is an example from the wheel of disruption that uses the payments, beacons, and Internet of Things as the primary engagement channels to the consumer. And underlying that, the power of big data, apps, geolocation, and messaging is used to engage the customer more effectively. Burberry is another example of brand engagement. Angela Arendt's now of Apple called Burberry the 1 million square foot store. The whole strategy was dusting down the brand towards the young and successful. It's become a media content company as well as a fashion retailer. Its ethos is that every interaction is crucial, no matter what channel it occurs through. And it's all about brand engagement. They believe that mind share equals market share, and this is converted into 2 billion revenue by 2012. From a wheel of disruption perspective, the Burberry approach is different to that of Starbucks. They look at the customer interaction points on the wheel of disruption, from makers, the virtual AI and AR, but also include the Internet of Things and sharing. This is underpinned by big data, ephemeral, gamification and messaging capabilities in the technology landscape. Procter & Gamble have implemented the concept of virtual wall and underlying metric touchpoints. New virtual walls sat inside malls or at tube stations mimic the shelves at a supermarket. This is a shortened supply chain with a buy anywhere concept, and it was introduced in the Czech Republic initially as a virtual drugstore. Using QR codes, passers-by can identify an offer, scan the code, and order the item. Not only does this shorten the supply chain, but this also gives the CMO useful insight into consumer and brand personas. This approach was adapted from ideation with DreamWorks and their digital imagery unit. In the back office, they've used the concept of metric touchpoints. They call this the Envision Center. The top 10 retail stores are projected onto a wall showing their real-time performance against actionable metrics. This is a constantly moving process, and they're able to perform and respond appropriately. This digital upskill focus across its workforce that maintains its brand centrality is critical to Procter & Gamble's customer experience in the future. From a wheel of disruption perspective, this uses beacons, in this case the QR codes, the Internet of Things, sharing, and virtual AI and AR. It also is underpinned by a second screen, in this case the virtual wall, big data, apps, and of course geolocation. The CIO drives traffic to the mobile store through the advent of the QR code, and the CMO picks up additional insight, not only about the purchasing patterns, but also about the personas that purchase those items. Next we come to Tesco and its scan and shop facility. This, in essence, is a cost-reducing mechanism, cutting out the time from shelf to checkpoint for the consumer and, of course, for the CIO. It also, from a CMO perspective, enables shopper patterns to be tracked. It can see where you go and how you shop against your club card. This, in effect, brings a CIO-CMO intersection in terms of the benefits associated with this digital offer. In addition, Tesco can scan customer faces in the stores using a concept called Optimize. This monitors eye patterns of shoppers, monitoring what they're looking at on the shelves and how long they spend looking at it. This facility enables the CIO to manage situational analysis, interaction and face scans, while the CMO can harness the data from this and link it to the club card from a digital persona perspective. From a wheel of disruption perspective, this is really harnessing payments, wearables, geolocation and messaging. And it's also underpinned by big data and a second screen. The new design for digital requires a different focus for the Chief Marketing Officer and the Chief Information Officer. It's now time to remove the CMO-CIO divide for eternity. Implement a new design for digital in our organisations. Focus on outcomes from the technology centre and adapt our roles and skill sets to embrace a digital target operating model. So, the new design for digital is all about delivering outcomes from the technology centre. The 6 building blocks we see in front of us are based on Capgemini's 2014 Technovision digital building blocks. On the left, we have invisible infrastructure and sector as a service, which is the traditional infrastructure and application platforms that the CIO manages. On the right, we have the you experience and the we collaborate areas, which is the traditional world in which the CMO operates, enhancing the customer experience for the consumer. In the middle, we have the battleground of today, which is the opportunity of tomorrow. That's the foundation of data, or what we call thriving on data, and process on the fly, which is the adaptive processes that a digital organization requires to match the pace of consumer change. Bringing the CMO and the CIO together in this area, collaboratively rather than under combat, is the challenge for each organization. This needs to be a reconciliation meeting point for digital transformation going forward, rather than a battleground. The CIO will insulate the organization from the underlying infrastructure and application complexities. The CMO will embrace corporate data while supporting not only the required customer experience and digital outcomes, but also the adaptation of the processes on which they rely. The CIO agenda will move more towards data artist for the IT integration and the customer experience outcome, and the CMO will, of course, embrace process on the fly as a catalyst for brand collaboration with the CIO. This journey requires adaptation to the current and future workforce. The future digital workforce needs to blend the creative skills of the Chief Marketing Officer, the marketing skills effectively, with the integration skills of the Chief Information Officer, IT skills in a nutshell. The CMO-CIO partnership stands at the tipping point of digital culture. Future digital operating models will need to incubate and propagate these skills from customer interfaces through to the underlying operations to ensure that the customer and their needs always remain at the heart of things. In the example, we have 9 key skills. The blues represent the creative skills of the Chief Marketing Officer: sense-making, social intelligence, adaptive thinking, a design mindset, and new media literacy, crucial in a marketing role. The black options represent the Chief Information Officer and their skill set: cross-cultural, virtual view of the world, computational thinking. It's transdisciplinary in nature, spans disciplines, and is cognitive and able to discriminate and filter information for importance and priority. The combination of these 9 skills needs to be bred into the future workforce from the ground up. Of course, bringing the CMO and the CIO together at the technology centre and adapting the workforce to take the best of CMO and CIO skill sets is not the full story. We also need to live the customer journey via the touch points of process and data interaction on a daily basis. It's a cultural change. This cultural change is the most challenging component of digital delivery today, but it's also the greatest opportunity for digital success tomorrow. Ensuring we implement a human-to-human personalization strategy, one customer at a time, requires effective balance of revenue, cost drivers such as reducing interface complexity in the CIO brief, and risk drivers such as consistent and governed focus of the IT landscape and processes. And these things need to remain aligned at all times through transition. In a nutshell, we need to respond more like a digital startup, whilst assuring like a Fortune 500 giant. And this is a critical balancing act. future business model will be more akin to an outcome-embedded nervous system. Digital organizations, digital innovators, need to accelerate the drive to this model. The traditional organization is more data-centric and siloed in nature. It focuses 80% of its effort on acquisition and marshalling of information from inside the organization. This is the realm of data science today. It's risk-averse, focuses on IT silos, has a fixed cognitive focus, is very integration-led, and it's more inside-out data and structured in nature. 80% of the effort we expend is wedded to the data through a complex shield of mathematics. The future, that of an outcome-embedded nervous system, is the realm of the data artist. To be ahead of the game, we will need 80% of our focus to be on the intelligence within the context of each business interaction. This is the analysis and action stage of data provisioning. The digital nervous system will be revenue optimized, process or outcome centric in nature, will be personalized and highly visual to the consumer, will be actionable in terms of how it's managed with a story for the consumer, and will be outside in and inside out focused, merging the traditional domain of CMO and CIO data for the benefit of the consumer. All future shared digital operating models will act as the creative brand and technology glue for the provision of this outcome-embedded nervous system. Finally, we are now seeing the emergence of digital nurseries. These digital nurseries are narrowing the CMO-CIO divide through an approach which encompasses a unique blend of software, hardware, cloud, analytics, and often integrated telecoms. This blend is delivered using a startup-like approach, which is socio-technical in nature and delivered on an agile basis using something called digital pods. The approach, which looks at external factors driving change against the evolving role of digital to deliver omni-channel experience, is tempered against the internal transformation needs of the organization. This approach enables a more digitally enabled self-service provision across channels. By operating on a try-before-you-buy basis, it is able to validate user interface and user experience needs in prototype-driven iterations. This has been proven to accelerate the time to market by 20% and reduce the rework in the CIO's world by 50%. Based on a mobile second strategy, it is built on an analytics ecosystem that adapts consumer behavior in customer experience positive increments. This is clearly the future for digital. At the beginning of the session, I promised that we would conclude with the 7 steps to an integrated digital backbone. And as we've seen over the presentation duration, these steps will narrow the CMO-CIO divide in your organization, and that can only be a good thing for your digital agility going forward. Step 1 was about the CMO and CIO driving shared outcomes from the technology center. In effect, they meet at the world of data and process in collaboration rather than in combat. Step 2 was about embracing digital Darwinism and was catalyzed by the wheel of disruption. The wheel of disruption identified the interaction points with the consumer and tied those to the underlying data capabilities. This, in turn, delivered digital transformation of the front office customer experience in parallel with the back office operations. And if you recall, we looked at examples from Starbucks, Procter & Gamble, Tesco and Burberry as exemplary in this space. Step 3, we need to implement a new design for digital. And that, in effect, is a new operating model based on a digital back approach. The digital back approach takes the CMO customer experience outcome and drives change through the underlying processes and data to the world of the CIO. Companies that apply a digital veneer and effectively digitize their physical processes will not survive in the future. The fourth step was about adapting our workforce to merge creative and integration skills. The world of the CMO and CIO have value in the skill sets they bring to the fray. An appropriate blend of these skill sets in both IT and marketing in the future business will drive greater digital agility into the operation. Step 5 is about living the customer journey through customer-enhancing interactions that are powered rather than hindered by the underlying processes and data. We need to live the process via the data rather than via spreadsheets. Step 6 is about the drive to outcome-embedded nervous systems. We need to focus more on data art to see eye to eye, to see insight to intelligence in our organizations. The traditional challenge of silos and exoskeletons and structured information, whilst still important, is not integral to a digital experience going forward. We need to be more data art and more innovative in our approach to harnessing data to meet customer experience needs. Finally, the 7th step looks at changing your operating model to adopt digital nurseries as in-house catalysts. These adopt a startup-like customer experience positive approach to digital incubation and adapt as consumer and market needs dictate. It is through these vehicles that the CMO and the CIO can operate digital enhancements on a try-before-you-buy basis. And that concludes the 7 steps to the integrated digital backbone. I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to your comments. Thank you very much.